Hey guys, good morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning, guys. Okay, guys, if you're just coming in, we are in court today. We are in Houston, Texas for the Xavier Davis trial. This is a murder for hire trial, and the defendant actually pled guilty on Monday. But because of the nature of the trial, this is a capital um, death penalty case. So they are still going through the trial phase so that the jury will be able to make a decision between life without parole and the death sentence. So it's pretty interesting. I started watching it last night. So court's going to be starting, I think, pretty soon. So good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Tap in, guys. As soon as court gets into session, I will let you guys know. Hi, Shay. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Hi, Clear. Good morning, Clear Ashes. Good morning. So the courtroom is in, but they don't have the audio quiet. So I will bring the video up when the defendant comes in. He's in custody. Hey guys, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I'm waiting. They're just waiting to get started. So this is the Xavier Davis trial. I don't know if you guys have seen this or not, but if you're in the Houston area, I'm sure you know about this. A couple of people did comment. I dropped a short this morning about it. Um really, really interesting. I mean, so complex. Um we're on Zoom, so it looks a little dark, but um, I'm sure once the judge comes on, there'll be a few more vantage points. So this is obviously like wide angle view of the courtroom. So as soon as things get started, I think they told the jury to be back by 10 today, Houston time. So they should be getting started momentarily, I would imagine. Hey, good morning. Good morning, everybody. If you want a brief synopsis, I did drop a short today with kind of like very high level. But the interesting thing is that the defendant actually pled guilty with no deal on Monday. So there's no promise of anything. And based on the nature of the charges, they are looking at it's either death penalty or life without parole. So there's no promises and the jury has to make the decision. So they basically still are having to go through the whole entire trial because this is a death penalty case. And pretrial starts for the person, his co-defendant, next month, who actually is the person that put the hit out. So I'll give you guys a brief um, kind of overview. So this guy who's on trial, his name is Xavier Davis. He got involved in a M4H murder for hire plot. I wish I could mute this, but I don't think I can. I'm gonna drop it down for a second. He got involved in a murder for hire plot, and basically, a woman that he knew had been involved with another woman. I don't know if he gave her all of that detail, but he had been involved with this other woman. This woman, Alexis Williams, had been involved with another female, and they broke up. And she was upset. She was not happy about the breakup, and basically put out a hit on the female that she had been dating and her man and her children. So this guy, Xavier Davis, went and basically it was like a massacre. And this happened in 2021. The case is going on now. He decided to plead guilty on Monday, and I think he's just basically trying to spare his life from going on death row. And her trial starts next month, Alexis Williams. So the former girlfriend, the husband, and one of the children passed away. One of the children who got shot survived and was able to tell law enforcement what happened, and also protected her baby brother. They getting ready to bring him in? Okay. I'll bring the video back up in just a second. As soon as it looks like they're just kind of waiting for. They might be waiting for the defendant to come up. Okay, they just muted. Good. Oh, well. I thought they muted. I'll bring it back as soon as I see him come in. Hey, everybody. I feel like if any of you have been watching this, I feel like this is a much smaller courtroom than the courtroom they were in on Monday, but maybe it's the same one. It just looked packed from the vantage point. The guy who's walking right here, that's the prosecutor. This guy right here. I would say get your it's getting, I don't wanna say it's getting late, but, they do their 12 o'clock lunch break, so I don't know if they'll work through lunch now because, they take a break at 12 o'clock, and it's 10:15 Houston time, so they have a little bit of time, I guess, to get things going. Okay, I'm gonna take it down just until we until I see he's coming through the door. So you guys just say good morning to each other. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I'll drop a link. Let me drop a link to the short that I put up, but I when it goes on break, I'll give you guys some more information. I just don't know how much time we have. I don't know that this is broadcasting on anyone else's channel, so I want to try to make sure I catch when he comes in because there's no playback. Okay, this was let me play this real quick, see if hold on. Mm, okay, I'm gonna wait till they go to a break before I play anything because I don't want to miss when they call court to order. Okay, they're cross talking and I guess they're waiting for I think they're just waiting for the defendant to come up. So I'm hearing that there's some bad weather in Houston or there's been bad weather in Houston and that's some of the holdup. So what else is new? I lived in Houston for 5 years and the rain is when it rains it's bad. When it's tornado weather, when it's hurricane, all of that, it's usually something very wet. Other than that, I felt like Houston always had really beautiful weather, but when it's hot, it's hot. When it's raining. So, but apparently there's some weather and it's holding up the folks. It's raining. Okay. Thank you, Michelle. Michelle is in Houston. I used to live, and I don't know what it's like over there now, but I used to live at Kirby and Braeswood. I lived downtown for like almost a year, and I lived for the most part. I lived right there at Kirby and Braeswood. just a second, guys. Okay, I think the courtroom view they took down. So, okay. They took down the view of the courtroom for a minute, so maybe something is happening. Hey, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Oh, really? I'm glad. Now, I don't know that everybody is a mom, but you know what I mean? We're definitely it's predominantly female. I would say we're in the 90 class somewhere. But it's holding strong to a 10% male audience. Not quite, but we're definitely predominantly female collective here. So I'm glad that you found your tribe or one of your YouTube tribes. I'm glad to hear that. That makes me feel good. That's a testament to everybody here because everybody brings the energy. Ooh. Yeah. Well, it's the change in season. The change in season definitely does that. I mean, even though spring already came in, you notice how weird the weather was last week with the wind and the storms and the lightning, and it was bad. But it's that clash of winter going out, spring coming in. I don't know, winter flew. Winter literally, it was over. It's so short. It's so short. I never really realized how short winter is, but yeah. Anyway, I was giving everybody like a brief kind of synopsis on this case, but I don't want to flip screens because I'm not sure when they're going to call court to order, and I don't want us to miss anything. So I'm just trying to kind of be still and wait. But if you do a quick search for Xavier Davis, there is is it KHOU? Um, did the 3-hour opening statements, which we can go back to opening statements. It was really good. I wanted to play that this morning, but I didn't know. I was having a hard time getting a hold of someone so I could get into so I could bring this to you guys. So it was interesting, and it was kind of shocking that he came in. So the defendant came in and pled guilty, and I guess this is in Texas. This is Texas, it's Houston, but as far as how the judicial system works in Texas, you're still going through the whole entire process because this is a death penalty case. So, and the jury decides life without parole or death. and they have to hear the evidence to be able to make that determination. So it's basically like they're going through the whole entire trial so that they can make the determination whether he will get a death penalty or life without parole. My guess, based on what cuz I was up most of the night. I was listening to the 3-hour video and watching other videos about what had happened almost 4 years ago now. Um I think he probably knew it wasn't worth, maybe he didn't feel like getting dragged, but his information's coming out anyway, but maybe it's possible he felt like they're going to find him guilty anyway, cuz maybe he's just like, I am guilty. So he went in there, pled guilty, and I think he's hoping to save himself the death penalty. Now, the other person, Alexis Williams, I don't know what her story is going to be. I don't know if she's going out trying not guilty or what. Um, I'm not really sure, but we get ready to find out. And they say she's going to testify. They're calling her to testify. I don't know what we've missed so far. I saw half of Monday, and then I don't know if the camera crews decided because he'd already pled guilty, they decided they weren't going to cover this. But this is the first death penalty case in, they said, some time, like 4 or 5 years. They haven't had a death penalty case in Houston, and it's kind of surprising. Like, the coverage was Monday and that was it. Nobody else is covering it. So, it was interesting to me. So, um the Houston Chronicle is covering it. I was also reading some articles last night on day 2 and day 3. Um this is set to go for another little while. So we're still backstage right now. Let me see. We're still backstage. So back in Zoom. So just bear with me. I would say now is probably a good time to get your coffee, get your snack, get your something to eat before it starts. And I'll just have to put a timestamp in as to when we got started. Hi, Jennifer. How are you? I've been checking to see if there's any updates yet on Darnell Jones. Uh, his name. When you type in Darnell, the Google immediately wants to go to Donnell. Anyway, but I've been waiting to see if there's any updates. Are they giving him the boot out of the hospital yet? He did rack up some charges. So just to talk briefly about what happened to Kimani Latigue, her, I'm gonna say, quote unquote, father, I don't know, Darnell Jones, he got shot in Columbus. He's in the hospital. So these days it's like they do miracles at the hospital. People are in and out of the hospital very quickly. He got shot Tuesday? It's Thursday. I don't know how serious his injuries were. If his injuries were bad, maybe he'll be there through the weekend, but it's possible he could be up and out the hospital tomorrow. They seem to do a lot and get people very well on their feet with all kinds of pain medication and steroids. But I guess it's also something to make sure that, is he going to be able to survive? Um, in Toledo jail. So maybe they do want to make sure that he's got a good chance of continued healing, because unless they're going to put him in sort of like a protective custody cell or situation, where he's able to get adequate rest and food to be able to heal, because I do think obviously they want to get his story, they want to understand what happened, and can't do that if he's passed away. So um yeah, it's like, isn't it, it's a turn of events when you have to actually care for somebody who really doesn't deserve to get what he's getting. But um it's unfortunate that he got shot. So I think, I almost feel like he was just trying to have the police officers do his own dirty work. That's just my thing. I feel like he put himself in a position to uh have that happen. So I don't know. We'll see. Um they have us backstage. I like having the view so we can see what's going on, but we're in the back. We're I'm in the Zoom, but they took the view of the courtroom down because they were cross talking and stuff like that. Um mm, oh, okay. Okay, we're just waiting for court to get started. It's like I see my avatar pulsating. I guess it's just picking up on all the quiet noise. It's quiet in my house right now. You know how it's like FOMO, like fear of missing out, and it's like you don't know what's going on. I wonder if when they come bring the screen back, is he going to be in the courtroom? Like, are they having some sort of conversations? Maybe they're seating the jury right now. The jury's coming in because the jury was supposed to be in by 10 Houston time, so it's 10:37 now. So it's quite possible the jury was coming in and they wanted to make sure we couldn't see. So maybe right next to me. Lammy got in trouble this morning. He didn't get in trouble, but he should have. But yeah, Lammy, Lammy and his little bad butt. It looks like one of the participants dropped off. I'm always never sure about Zooms until it's like, until it starts and you're in, I'm never Okay. See, Bible lady, you don't talk Portia up. Let me I put myself on mute. It's like, y'all looking for me? I'm joking. It's not your fault. I wear earphones. She didn't. She wouldn't. You know, it's about that time for the mailman and all that stuff to be rolling down the street, all the delivery folks. She's just getting herself mentally prepared. She said, "Here I go." You didn't get the live notification? Oh my god. We're waiting for court to start. I probably should have waited until court started, but I wasn't sure. Um I'll know for subsequent lives. I'll know in the future like how to gauge this thing. But they were supposed to be starting court. Well, let me just say this. Court was the jury was supposed to be in by 10. So whatever that means. That they would start soon after that. All right, let me put you guys on mute for a minute. I almost feel like this is taking forever. I almost feel like and some people said they didn't get notifications. I should shut this down and come back. I didn't get a notification, so I was elsewhere listening to Liv get roasted and watching the clock. Like, where is Fran? LOL. Then I found everybody. Oh, that's so cute. Liv get roasted. You were somewhere. Liv was getting roasted. She's so. Let me be quiet. That's not. That's interesting. Huh. It's so easy. She's such a easy read. Let me not get off track, but yes, I feel you. I was gonna come over there, but I was trying to get the information for this, then I got it, and then I was just like, "Okay." I wonder if should I take this down? Yep, at lunch, I'd like to let me go kiki with my girls. Oh, you're so oh, queen. We're just waiting for court to start. We are waiting for court. Gosh, I really liked when we could actually see the courtroom. We kinda just recapped a little bit ago. So the like for the 3rd, maybe the 2nd time. I did put up a short earlier. So this is a case of it's a murder for hire, Houston, Texas. Um, right now this is the hitman who pleaded guilty on Monday, and they're still having to go through the full trial because this is a capital case with death penalty as a option for punishment. So that's kind of what's going on. So they're still going through the actual case, even though Monday when he came in, he pled guilty. I known I was going to be able to get into the Zoom, I would have started much earlier and gave you guys a full recap. We're gonna have to wait till like lunchtime. I don't want to get too deep into it, but I did put up a short. I just don't want to lose my place because if I do, then we might miss something when court comes back into session. So when they go to lunch, I'll pull up some things to give you guys a full recap. But if you Google Xavier Davis Houston, you're gonna get a lot. But just give me a couple of hours. When it goes to break, we'll get a little bit of a recap. He looked familiar, but you couldn't put your finger on it. From Are you in Houston? He definitely has been in trouble before. He's got a very interesting past. Oh my gosh. We're not even backstage. They pulled down the live from the window into the courtroom, and I'm not sure why. Let me see. So I'm not backstage. I'm in the live. I'm in the Zoom, but the courtroom hadn't been called to order yet. So I don't know why I can't click on this. Let's see. Okay, Double H. They used to be over there by, was it Northwest Mall over there off like, I can't even remember. I used to work off of all the way up Post Oak and maybe 10. You're not late. We're waiting for court to start. We're just talking now. I'm gonna have to edit this part out. Oh, what were you watching when you found out I was live? If I knew someone else was showing this, then I would break off, but I haven't seen anyone else showing this. My soup? My soul is fine. My soul is amazing, okay? Um, you made chicken salad out of rotisserie chicken and made the bone broth from the carcass, drank a cup every morning. Yes, I don't know, we've turned into some chicken turkey soup heads around here, so it's delicious, and, it's very, 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 very good. Very good. It was yummy. I have it on the stove now. Ah, I thought you were checking in on my soul. I was like, "How sweet, how concerned, how lovely for Babale to be checking in on my soul. My soul is one with the Lord." My soup. It's good. Yes, it's very good. You guys are silly. I ugh, if I would have known this was gonna take all this time, I would have just been sitting back in the cut waiting. It's like, I don't wanna be bothersome. Let me see. Let me check my messages. Uh-oh. Mm. Alright, let me check and see if anyone else is okay. I wonder what's going on. You say there's never a dull moment in bougie chat. Okay. This is not exciting. I feel bad because I thought that they were gonna start on time. So my bad, y'all. Oh, it's green now. I wonder what's going on. I want to send a chat and say, well, let me just send a chat to the person I know, to the host. I'm just assuming everything is fine because we're still in the Zoom. Um, you know what I mean? We're still in the Zoom, but just speaking in general. Oh, we have laughs and giggles and chitty chats. Um, feels like waiting for water to boil, doesn't it? It's like, if I knew, if I had it set up to where we were good, then I would just let it do its thing and then we could just go back to it. But I don't know. It's like I'm on hold. I'm on hold. I hate to be bothersome because I'm not a bugaboo, but I almost feel like I want to be like, hey, sorry to bugaboo right now. Let me see. Like send a message in the chat. Oh god. I felt better being able to see the chat. Now not being able to see the chat is like, okay, let me just see. Has court started? I'm just gonna say it like that. Just try to not I don't want to get kicked out. Has court started? Okay, I'm gonna say it like this. Has the defendant come out yet? Or the jury come out yet? Or are we still holding? Say it like that. Has the jury come out? Okay. my God, I wonder if he's... It's like we can't see anything anymore. Oh. Oh, you can just hang out with me? You guys are so sweet. Well, we're definitely in the Zoom. And we had the Zoom visual up. I clicked out of it because they were just cross talking, and typically that would be kind of when, until the judge sits at the bench, which I couldn't tell if he was at the bench or not. Usually you don't kind of show the courtroom. So I think the judge was at the bench, but I sent a Zoom DM, but I don't know if he's going to see it. It's 12 o'clock our time. It's like, damn. Put my church finger in the air and say, woohoo! 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 I hate to miss the shackle shuffle. Okay, hold on a second. Let's do this. Because I don't know what's going on. I mean, the jury could be very, very much giving delayed. Let's see. I'm just gonna we're gonna just do what we do, because I don't know. We can't wait on everything. It's like, oh my God. Okay, let me show you guys, give you a brief overview of what when this is some shit. I don't even know where to okay. Let's go with... Is it I wonder if it's really... Is it really, really, really bad? Okay. The storms right now? Okay. Let's take a look at this while we're waiting. I have my eyes on the... Okay.
To capital murder today. County man pleading guilty to capital murder today, just moments after his trial began. Xavier Davis will now be sentenced for the role he played in the 2021 triple homicide of a Houston couple and their 6-year-old daughter.
Yeah, it was quite the case, and a court case you would have seen streaming live today on KHOU 11+. Our Stephen Goen monitoring this trial, and it really started with a surprise.
Yeah, that's right, Sherman. But even with this guilty plea, the trial will continue so the jury can decide a punishment. The prosecution is seeking the death penalty, arguing that Davis's words aren't enough to absolve his crimes. In the courtroom today, the prosecution played audio from 911 calls that were made on the day of this triple murder back in June 2021. Investigators have said Davis was hired by a childhood friend, Alexis Williams, to carry out the killing of her ex-girlfriend, Denyavia Lagway, and her family. At the family's apartment, Davis fatally shot Lagway, her husband Gregory Carhey, and their 6-year-old daughter Harmony. In their opening statements today, prosecutors painted Davis as a career criminal with a record that started when he was a teenager. The defense argued that it was Davis's rough childhood and family history that led him here.
This plea of guilty, these are just words. We know what his actions are. Don't let him pretend to be something else.
There are forces that can affect a human being that make you do things that other people wouldn't do. And you're about to learn that.
Now, today, the prosecution called a family member of the victim to the stand. A Houston police officer also testified. Court officials have told us that the sentencing phase of this trial that we're now in could last several weeks. The last death penalty case in Harris County was 3 years ago. The defendant in that case was sentenced, but he is still on death row. Back to you.
All right, quite the case. Thank you, Stephen.
I don't know if she's charged. So the despicable ex-girlfriend, are you talking about Alexis Williams? Yes. The hitman's girlfriend who had some drama with her too. I'm not sure. I'm not sure which ex-girlfriend you were talking about. So, I'm not sure. But if you're talking about the murder for hire person, yes. Okay. Let me start it over here. You guys can get the gist of what's going on since we're on hold. Okay. If something changes and court begins, I just don't know what's going on. I hate to call because I don't want to be like an annoyance. If anyone comes in is like, is this today? Is this now? Can you please let them know this is not today, this is not now, this was Monday. This right now is Monday. We're waiting for court to resume for today. Okay, so just bear with me. We've been waiting for an hour. I'm in the Zoom, but they have not called court yet to session, so just bear with me.
If I may, Judge, before the jury is brought out, I'm going to ask the court to admonish the defendant that this is a plea, this is not an allocution, and there should be no comments to the gallery or to the jury regarding remorse or guilt or anything like that.
The defense heard what he said in court earlier, and it's certainly up to the court to make that. He just makes his intention to plead guilty, Your Honor.
He's just guilty.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
All rise for the jury.
Thank you. Please be seated. All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And welcome back. Just going to give you some preliminary instructions before we swear you in this morning. There are no cell phones in this courtroom. Please just make sure your cell phones are off. We'll give you plenty of reason to check them.
So this was opening statements on this day, just so you guys, I'm sure you guys can figure this out.
Lunch around noon every day, and we'll work until 5. So this morning, we're going to swear you in as a jury. Then we're going to arraign the defendant, and then hear statements. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you'll raise your right hand to be sworn. Please.
Do you and each of you solemnly swear or affirm that in this case, now in trial, you will a true verdict render according to the law and evidence submitted to you, so help you God? I do.
All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. All right, are both sides ready to proceed?
State of Texas is ready.
What says the defense?
Defense is ready, Your Honor.
Mr. Davis, will you please stand? State, can you arraign the defendant at this time?
Thank you, Judge. In cause number 1839550, styled the State of Texas versus Xavier Davis. In the name and by the authority of the State of Texas, the duly organized grand jury of Harris County, Texas, presents in the District Court of Harris County, Texas, that in Harris County, Texas, Xavier Davis, hereafter styled the defendant, heretofore on or about June 30th, 2021, did then and there unlawfully, during the same criminal transaction, intentionally and knowingly cause the death of Gregory Carkey by shooting Gregory Carkey with a deadly weapon, namely a firearm, and intentionally and knowingly cause the death of Donyavia Lagway by shooting Donyavia Lagway with a deadly weapon, namely a firearm, against the peace and dignity of the state, signed the foreperson of the grand jury.
Mr. Davis, how do you plead?
Guilty, Your Honor.
Thank you. A guilty plea will be entered, and you may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, we thought this might happen. I'm going to send you out very briefly to do some additional admonishments, all right? And then
All right for the jury.
thank you. Be seated. Mr. Davis, you can stand up for me, sir. Do you still wish to proceed in pleading guilty to this jury?
Yes, sir.
All right. Understanding that you're waiving certain rights, you understand that?
Yes, sir.
All right. And that once you plead guilty to this jury, there will a guilty plea will be entered. You will not be able to back out of this at this point. You understand that? All right. Do you have any other questions?
Yes, sir.
All right. You understand the rights that you're waiving?
Yes, sir.
All right. You understand you're waiving again that right to the state to prove you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yes, sir.
It's also waiving your presumption of innocence because you're telling the jury you're guilty. Do you understand that? And there may be witnesses you will not have an opportunity to be subject to cross-examination because you've pled guilty. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
All right. And you're probably giving up your appeal when it comes to whether or not you're guilty of this case because you're admitting that you're guilty.
Yes, sir.
And obviously, there could be those immigration consequences we talked about.
Yes, sir.
Do you need any time to talk to your lawyers?
No, sir.
Have they answered all your questions?
Yes, sir.
Have any questions?
No, sir.
Anything else either side wants me to inquire about the defendant this time?
Nothing from the state.
Not in regards to the defendant, but we would have a motion on this.
You all want to come up for motions only?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Davis, you can be seated.
Okay, guys, I'm going to advance because so when he put in so this is opening statements. This happened on Monday. Okay. So this happened and they're trying to work everything out, having their conversations, and then I'm going to advance it. Just a sec. And then they're going to actually resume with the opening statements.
But we have to know that they're not, Judge.
Okay. And then in real time, I'm in the Zoom for court today. And the coordinator told me that the judge, I don't know, he said probably the state or someone had to use I don't know, whatever the function was, and the judge turned off the Zoom, not turned off the Zoom, but either turned off the camera or turned off the Zoom for something. And he said he's going to have to go back in there and tell him to turn it back on. So court has started today. But yeah, he said they just got started a few minutes ago, and he said he thinks that somebody was using using the system, and he said the judge probably forgot to turn it back on, or they could still be using it. He said just bear with him, he's going to have it turned back on a little bit, but may as well just watch this so some of you guys who are not familiar with the case can get familiar with it. It's interesting. All right, let's just keep going. I think I sped through, and basically this is opening statements. So if you're not familiar with this case, this happened in 2021. This is just coming to court. This happened on Monday, but I think, like I said, if you were here earlier, I believe that he's trying to save himself from death penalty, and went ahead and pled guilty. And also, I'm going to just also assume it's based on what I was listening to last night. There is an overwhelming amount of evidence that brings him back to this particular case. And it seems like somebody ratted him out. So someone tipped off the police as to the particulars. And but I'll let you guys hear this in the opening statement. So let's keep going.
We do plan to have witnesses testify as to facts in punishment, Judge. I think for the purposes of this morning and for the efficiency and respect of this jury, what we can do, Judge, is ask after opening statements for the family members who we plan to have testify to step out of the courtroom, and we can bring this up with the court afterwards.
And if I'm to understand, you're saying you want them to be present during the opening statement, even if they're going to testify?
Yes, sir. I believe the Texas Constitution allows them to be so.
We judge if they're fact witnesses.
Allowed, and as the defendant's pled guilty, I'm allowed the next case.
All right, Xavier.
Thank you. Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, a couple things. As soon as you come in, we're staying for you. You can sit wherever you want. All right. You don't have to sit in your assigned seats. Wherever you want to sit is fine. We're staying for you. So come in, sit down. We can't stand or we can't sit for the other. So thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I now will go and turn you over to the attorney for opening statement I've given about how to give your attention to Mr. Wright. Whenever you're ready.
That's all the money that I have. Those are the last words of Gregory Clark. Beloved father, friend, brother, cousin. 35 years old, he spoke his last words. They were the same last words that Don Xavier Lagway heard. Same ones. He was a mother of 4, a sister, a daughter, a cousin, a dear friend. And those were the last words that she ever heard Gregory speaking. And those are the last words that she ever heard herself. That is what the defendant just pled guilty to. But it does not stop there. And the last words that Lyric Carkey ever heard her dad speak. His daughter, a big sister to Greg Jr., to Harmony, age 6, and to Grace, age 1. These were the last words she ever heard her father speak. They were the last words that Harmony Carkey. She was a sweet girl. Enjoyed playing with her brothers, her big sister. Those were the last words she ever heard. Because on June the 30th of 2021, there was a knock on the door at their apartment, apartment 1202, at the Toro Place apartment complex in Southwest Side. When Xavier opened the door, not recognizing the man who walked in, she did what you would expect a mother to do. She huddled her children up. As this defendant, Xavier Davis, walked into the apartment, wearing a black shirt, black cap, black pants, black shoes, holding a silver Smith & Wesson 38 Special Air-Weight revolver. With the family all in the living room, Grayson walking around, Gregory put all the money that he had down on the ground. Xavier Davis took that pistol and he put it to Gregory's head, pulled the trigger one time, killing him. Next, he turned that same pistol onto Xavier and put the gun to her head and pulled the trigger, killing her in her living room. Next, he turned to where the girls were, on the couch in their living room. Now, by this time, both of them had put their hands up over the head. We don't know if it's from the noise or to try and protect themselves, but we know their hands were there. After shooting Xavier, the defendant turned and pointed the gun to Harmony, age 6 years old, right at her head. And he pulled the trigger once. Remember, I said her hands were up by her head. The bullet went through her arm and into her brain, killing her in her living room. Next, he turned and he pointed the gun to Lyric, at 10 years old, doing the same thing her baby sister was doing, hands up by her head. By some mercy, the bullet that Xavier Davis shot at her was stopped by the bone in her forearm. The force still knocked her to the ground, and that's where she stayed while he took the money and he left. Everything about their lives either changed or ended because of him on that night in June of 2021. Now, Lyric, what she did is she picked her baby brother up and walking around her home in her living room, she started to check on her parents and on her little sister. As she was bleeding, carrying her brother from the bullet that left his gun and was in her arm, she picked up her phone and she called for help. She called her aunt, Jada, and begged her to come. Jada is Xavier's sister. Then she called Tyrell, Gregory's brother, her uncle, and she begged for help. Both families rushed to the Toro Place apartments. Tyrell and his friend Dontrell Morrison and Deshaun Stamps got there first. They even beat law enforcement. And they went up to apartment 1202, up the stairwell, in through a blue door. And that's where they saw 3 of their family members dead on the living room floor. Tyrell grabbed Grayson, the baby. Dontrell took Lyric's hand, the one that hadn't been shot. And they walked them into their new lives as orphans. They went back up to the apartment and waited for law enforcement. Tyrell begging for his brother to get up. Get up. But he wouldn't. He couldn't. Now, law enforcement, as they arrived on the scene, it was pretty chaotic at first. There are family members from the Lagways coming over. There are family members from the car heat. 4 gunshots have just rang out in an apartment. People's doors are opening. People are coming out to see what happened. How could this happen? Friends arriving, neighbors inquiring, and law enforcement started separating witnesses out. And then they contacted members of the Houston Police Department's Homicide Division. And you're going to hear from 2 homicide detectives, Detective Tracy Andrade and Lieutenant Joshua Horn, who are going to come and they're going to tell you about their investigation, what they learned when they arrived on the scene. Now, what Lieutenant Horn's going to tell you is that when he first got to that scene, he wasn't just looking for what he could see, but things that he didn't see were important to him as well. As they're processing that scene, they start to notice as they're moving furniture, as they're looking around where the bodies lay, that they don't see any cartridge casings. It suggested to Lieutenant Horn one of 2 things. Either the person who shot this family and killed them picked up their cartridge casings, or they used a revolver. Okay. Now, as they were processing the scene that night, as the night turns from June 30th into the early morning hours of July the 1st, there's a lot of unanswered questions that Lieutenant Horn and his team have. They don't know much about what happened. They just know who's dead. Now, as they begin their investigation, really to come up with the suspect, the person that you all now have seen plead guilty to this offense, they went back to their main station in Travis, just a couple of blocks from here, downtown. And they were all hands on deck. 3 people killed on the southwest side of Houston. One of them, a little girl. The Houston Police Department was all hands on deck. Now, what they started doing is creating flyers and trying to figure out where they can go canvass or for surveillance footage, because they were at a wall for hours and hours. Just one big question mark sat in front of them. Who did this? Early on the morning of July the 1st, they got an anonymous tip. And as they got that anonymous tip, they started to focus their investigation on one person, on Xavier Davis. One person and a couple of different locations. The first location was an auto car sales spot over off of Spencer Highway. The other one was a location over off of West Fuquay, 4855 West Fuquay. The person who lived at that location is a woman by the name of Vertasia Jackson. She's the defendant's girlfriend, okay? Now, what they learned from that tip is that the defendant may be staying in that area, may be staying at that apartment with Vertasia, and there may be some evidence of what happened at that apartment. And as police started to try and corroborate this tip that they were getting, all of the evidence that they saw suggested that the person on the other end of that line was getting it right, that it was Xavier Davis who did this. They sent officers from the homicide division to both locations. They went out to Spencer Highway looking for now a white Chrysler 300 that they believe the defendant may have bought that morning and may be driving. Next, they sent 2 officers with the Houston Police Department's homicide division to that West Fuquay address where Vertasia lived. And when they arrived on the scene, they saw Vertasia Jackson at the apartment. And as they were there, they saw a white Chrysler 300 pull up. The defendant opened the door and then fled on foot, took off running at the sight of law enforcement. Officers chased him through the complex and were able to detain him. Inside of his pockets was about $3,000 in cash. Inside of his pockets were 2 unfired 38 special Hornady hollow point red polymer tipped rounds. 2. They spoke to Miss Jackson and got consent to search her apartment. When they went inside of the apartment, they went up the stairs past her car. They went into their bedroom, and right there on the floor, next to where he slept, was a Smith & Wesson 38 Special silver airweight revolver. Loaded inside of it were 5 .38 Special Hornady hollow point red polymer tip bullets. 2 bullets, also unfired, were in a shoebox right next to where the gun was. So much about that gun becomes important to the investigation that the Houston Police Department was doing. Because you see, Lieutenant Horn was communicating with the medical examiner's office as well. Before any firearms analysis was done, the medical examiner's office was able to communicate to law enforcement that they need to be looking out for possibly a .38 Special with red polymer tips, because they took 3 bullets, 1 out of the head of Gregory Carkey, 1 out of the head of Donyavia Lagway, 1 out of the head of Lyric Carkey, excuse me, Harmony Carkey, at 6 years old. So when they found those red hollow tip bullets, when they found the red tips by the bedside, when they found the gun with the red tip bullets, law enforcement felt pretty confident that they were on the right track at this point. And you see that gun that was used, I told you that it would be coming up multiple times during the course of this trial, and it will. You'll hear a lot about the firearm because it was used multiple times. And every interaction that the defendant had, this gun kept coming up, kept being mentioned. You see, law enforcement didn't just stop there. They didn't just say, we've got the guy, we've got the gun, let's wipe our hands and move on. No, they kept looking for more evidence because they knew that one day it would be presented to you. So they kept looking. Lieutenant Horn pulled surveillance footage from the Toro Place apartments. Inside of that footage that you're going to get an opportunity to see, what you're going to see is a gray Jeep Compass with a black racing stripe. Moments before this family was killed, enter into the Toro Place apartment complex. Moments after they're killed, they leave. The defendant didn't have a gray Jeep Compass. So the question becomes, where? Why does he have it? And what law enforcement began to learn is this. Because they got a tip, again, another one, that Jeep Compass may have been burned out in Pearland, in Brazoria County. So they went and they met with the fire marshal out there. They learned from the team of Pearland police officers and EMTs and firemen who went out to that scene, where they found a gray Jeep Compass with a black racing stripe burned in the middle of a field. Next to it, a box of matches and a gas can. So they take the license plate from that Jeep and they ask other law enforcement, does anyone have anything with this car, with this license plate, with this type of car? And they learned that there was another team of officers with the Houston Police Department who were looking for a suspect for an auto theft that had occurred just moments before the Capitol murder. About 1.5 miles north of the Toro Place apartments, the defendant walked up to an individual sitting in the driver's seat. He pointed .38 Special silver gun at him, and he took his car at gunpoint. The defendant drove that car to the Toro Place apartments and drove around for several minutes looking for apartment 1202, looking for this family. After he killed them, he got back in that car and he drove it to Cullen Street on the south side of Houston, 10600 Cullen. There's a Valero there. Lieutenant Horn also got footage from there for you to see. And what you'll see is the defendant pulling up to that Valero, getting out, wearing the black shirt with the red and white circle, the black shorts, and the black shoes. And he goes into that Valero. And as he's standing in line waiting to make his purchase, you'll notice 2 things. The first is a black iPhone. He's got it in his hand. And the next is he's reaching into his left cargo short pocket and he's trying to get something out but he can't get it. And so he reaches all the way in and he pulls out a giant wad of cash. Takes a $1 bill, he puts the rest of the cash in his pocket, and he hands that to the clerk. He's now bought his matches. The matches that are going to show up at that field in Pearland, next to the car that he stole so he could drive it to the Toro Place apartments. And as you start to look at all of the evidence and you start to see exactly what it was that Lieutenant Horn and Detective Andrade and their team knew, you too will start to see exactly what the defendant did that day leading up to this crime. The crime that he has now told you he's guilty of. At that scene with the car and the gas can and the matches, there was a phone. A phone that had been abandoned by the person who had it. That phone had 2 phone numbers associated with it. One came back to nobody, John Doe. The other one came back to a woman by the name of Tawanita Pope. It's the defendant's mother. He had her cell phone, or he had a cell phone that he was using that had a number associated with it. Inside of that phone are photographs of the defendant and communications that you'll get to see that clearly show he was the person possessing that phone. He was the one that abandoned it in that field after burning the car. But Detective Horn, or Detective Andrade and Lieutenant Horn did not stop there. They began to look for more information and for more evidence to present to you the totality of what it was the defendant did that day. They started collecting geolocation data, and you're going to see a lot of it. Some of it from cars, some of it from phones. And the picture that it will show you is that there was detailed preparation, that there was planning that occurred, that this was thought out. Not just the what, the killing of this family, but the how. How are we going to get there? How am I going to have another car so that none of ours are on surveillance footage? How am I going to be able to get rid of that car far enough that they might not find it and still get home? You will see the movement of the people that supported the defendant during the course of this act. And you'll see all of that through the geolocation that Detectives Andrade and Lieutenant Horn brought. Now, at this point, because the defendant has pled guilty to the offense of capital murder, we still go into now what we lawyers call a unitary proceeding. It is one thing. At the end of the presentation of all of the evidence, you all, as a jury, will be sent back to the back. The first thing that you will be instructed to do by Judge Warren is to find the defendant guilty of the offense of capital murder. The next thing that you will be instructed to do is to then go into your deliberations regarding those 2 questions that we spoke to all of you about during jury selection, special issue number 1 and special issue number 2. Now, in just a moment, Ms. Harvey's going to get up and she's going to talk to you about those 2 things and about how now that we are in this unitary proceeding, some of the things that you're going to see and some of the things that you're going to hear, because it is no longer just about the who, the what, the where, and the when. Now that you know the defendant has pled guilty of the offense, now that you know a little bit about what happened inside of that apartment and how we know it was the defendant, you're also going to get to take a step back and look at the defendant's life, the choices that he has made throughout the course of his life. And that, along with the evidence that you'll see of this offense, is what will guide you. I'm going to pass it off to Ms. Harvey.
Xavier Davis massacred a family. He executed a 6-year-old. He left a 10-year-old for dead. Feels like that should be enough, doesn't it? It seems like if anybody deserved the death penalty, senselessly executing a 6-year-old girl, that should do it. But you know what? You don't have to rely on just that, because there's more. This defendant has pled guilty, but guilty is just a word. You're going to have to see Xavier Davis's actions. You're going to have to see every detail of the crime that he committed. Because if we're asking you to give him the ultimate punishment, you need to know. You need to know that after Xavier Davis was arrested, he went to the Harris County Jail, where his behavior has been nothing short of horrific. He spits on staff. He squirts them with every substance imaginable, from toilet water to urine to feces. He sets fires. He engages in riots. He floods his cell. He assaulted a guard, caused him a couple of stitches even. He tampers with everything from his electrical socket to the locks on his door. And he is manipulative, man. And he's going to try and manipulate you throughout this trial. But you're going to know. The evidence is going to show you exactly who he is. Xavier Davis committed his first crime at 13 years old. He stole a bike. He was given juvenile probation, pretty standard, an opportunity to avail himself of some programs, to right his wrongs, to make himself a better person. But he chose not to do that. He and his brothers pretty quickly went out and committed an aggravated robbery. They held up a man at gunpoint in the parking lot of a McDonald's. Now, because he was already on probation, and because he committed a violent offense with a gun, he was sent to juvenile lockup. We call that place TJJD. And he got a sentence of 5 years. Now, if he had behaved himself, if he had worked the programs, if he had connected with the trusted adults in that system, if he had worked with the peers in those groups to learn about who you are and why you do what you do and make yourself a better person, if he had done those things, he could have had a new lease on life about the same time most kids get a driver's license. Not Xavier Davis, he was having none of that. He behaved exactly as you'd expect. He was disruptive, he was combative, he was assaultive. He hit a guard in TJJD, not just one, two. As a result of that, he got some more time added to his sentence. So not only did he do every single day of his 5 years, but he did a little bit more on top of that. And he was released right about his 19th birthday. Because that's all TJJD can do for you. They can't keep you past 19. So if you won't help yourself, they let you go. So he's back on the streets of Harris County. And within 2 months, 69 days, he walks in to O'Neill's barbershop pretending that he needs a haircut. And you're going to see that from Xavier Davis over and over again. You're going to see him pretend to be one thing, so his target puts their guard down so that they then become a victim. He and a buddy walk into O'Neill's barbershop pretending they need a haircut. It very quickly turns into an aggravated robbery. He puts all the men on the floor at gunpoint, makes them pull down their pants. He zip ties their wrists. He zip ties a mother in front of her young son. He hits a man on the head with a gun. He gathers up everything he can, and he takes off in Mr. O'Neill's car. And he's not initially caught. It takes a minute for the law to catch up with him, but not until he decides to take a second swipe at the O'Neills. And then he goes to their house. Within 3 months, he doesn't pretend to need a haircut then. He pretends he's a delivery man. Mr. O'Neill's not home. Mrs. O'Neill is, and so are her 2 young daughters. And again with the zip ties all 3 of them. Women and children, there's no code for him. They are fair game. He takes money, he takes a gun, and he takes their other car. But you know what? His fingerprints are going to give him away. He might try to hide who he is, but it always comes out in the end. And Xavier Davis is ultimately arrested on the aggravated robberies. And he spends August, September, October, November, December in the Harris County Jail waiting for trial. And in December, somebody who clearly cares for Xavier Davis very much made a $30,000 bond for him. And as we hear all too often, all you have to do on bond is obey the rules and show up for court. Not Xavier Davis. Xavier Davis is going to then go and commit a burglary of a habitation. But now he's going to go outside Harris County. He's going to take his crime spree over to Brazoria County. And he's going to break into the house of a man named Mr. Burrell. Now, Mr. Burrell isn't there when it starts, but he walks in on it in progress. Xavier Davis goes into the Brazoria County Jail. He's sentenced to 5 years for his burglary. He's transferred back to the Harris County Jail, and he's sentenced to 8 years on the aggravated robberies. And he goes off to TDC. And in TDC, we all know you can get good conduct time and get released early. But in order to get that, you actually have to do good. You have to choose to be good. You have to choose to behave. And Xavier Davis refuses to make that choice over and over and over again. And in TDC, he traffics drugs. He engages in riots. He squirts the guards with the urine and feces. It's who he is. And he's going to pretend for you like he can't make a choice to be good, but we all know free will. It exists, and he chooses not to obey. So he does every single day of his 8 years, almost unheard of. Every single day. And he gets out in February of 2021. February, March, April, May, June. At the beginning of June, the police are called to Xavier Davis's girlfriend's house. They're investigating an aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. And Xavier Davis is charged with that. But he's not there to arrest, so they issue a warrant. Within a couple of days, he takes a handful of pills, gets concerned that maybe he's taken some fentanyl, so he goes to seek medical attention. But he can't do it as himself because there's an open warrant for it. So again, he pretends to be something he's not. He pretends to be his brother. He's released from the hospital pretty much before he even gets checked in. It's mostly a false alarm. Xavier Davis is fine. In fact, he's fine enough that the next day, he goes over to the Cargey's house and slaughters that family. He sentences Lyric to be an orphan. And now he's in front of you for the sentence that he has earned, for the sentence that he deserves. And you know the questions you're going to be asked. Is he a future danger? And is there sufficient mitigation to warrant a sentence of life instead of death? This plea of guilty, these are just words. We know what his actions are. Don't let him pretend to be something else. Don't let him fool you into letting down your guard so that he can make Harris County another victim. You know what the questions are going to be. And when this trial is over, you're going to know what the answers will be. This case is a yes, no. The defendant deserves death, and that's what we're going to ask you to sentence him to.
May it please the court. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it's been almost 4 years that I've represented Mr. Davis. And now, after almost 4 years, it is my duty to stand before you to tell you the theory of our case, to talk to you about what the evidence is going to show you about Mr. Davis. This case took a turn this morning. It took a turn when Mr. Davis stood, when Mr. Rain read the indictment to him, exactly what he was charged with, which wasn't evidence, but he looked at you and he said, "I'm guilty." Just as I am the only one who can stand here or a member of the defense team and give an opening statement of what we think this case is going to be about. He is the only person, not the judge, not the state, not any member of the defense team, who gets to look at a jury and make that decision and say, you don't have to prove it. I did it. And make that confession to a jury. That's what he did. So therein ends what we had talked about in voir dire, and it becomes a singular case. You're no longer burdened with making the decision of whether you're convinced beyond a reasonable doubt or the state has to prove it. He has proved it for you by his admission that he did it. You will determine the value of that and what that means. How in the world on this God's earth, you have to be asking yourself, before I start talking about our theory, you got to be asking yourself right now, if you heard what they said, how does a human being come to do and commit that crime? How does that happen? Of course you're asking yourself that. You're about to, when we present this evidence and it's all said and done, you're going to go make a decision, each of you individually, based on what we talked to you in M4HIRE, about whether or not an individual decision, a moral decision about whether he gets the death penalty or gets life without parole. So let's talk a little bit about that. One of the things that you're going to have to think about is what, even though he pleads guilty and is pled guilty and you're going to find him guilty, the first thing the judge is asking you to do in this case is to go back and look at all of the evidence and the circumstances around the offense. Okay? Now, wouldn't you want to know what happened in the case? Wouldn't you want, as the state develops their evidence, to tell you each and every fact that they know about this case, about how this offense happened, because you're going to be asked to consider it, consider everything about it to make the ultimate decision whether or not there's something about the case, the facts of the offense, how it happened, to determine whether or not there's something that lessens his moral culpability and there's sufficient mitigating circumstance to give him a life sentence rather than the death penalty. Okay? Nothing that I say in this opening statement, nothing, none of the evidence is going to be presented, as the state begins to call the witnesses, is to be taken by you that we mean in any way that he is anything but guilty of the offense, of intentionally and knowingly doing what he did. Okay? The things that we think are important that you know are questions that I'm going to be asking, and the other lawyers at this team, of the witnesses that come up and begin to talk about the case. So whether it's detectives, whether it's officers that initially made the scene, whether it's lay people who are on the scene, whether it's family members, whatever it is, we're trying to bring you evidence that we think you need to know about the case, about the facts of the case. Because all cases are not the same, and it's not necessarily the way Ms. Harvey says it is or Mr. Raines says it is. It's the way you interpret it. Because what you're going to be looking for is not whether he's guilty. Is there something that lessens his moral culpability? Let's talk about the facts of the case and why you should want to know everything about it, why you should think that the state of Texas should bring you the entire investigation that they did to explain things to you. Okay? Was there a plan to do this? Yes, there was a plan. You're going to hear about a plan. Okay? You're going to hear about who hatched the plan. It was a woman by the name of Alexis Williams. The name has not even been mentioned yet. Alexis Williams hatched that plan. She did so because she used to live at that very apartment complex and had a sexual relationship with Dunlavia. Dunlavia had just broke up with her and she had moved out. And Gregory Carhe was moving back in, the father of all those children. This woman, Alexis Williams, was angry and she was mad and she wanted to rob him because she knew he was a drug dealer. And she knew there would be money there. This is the plan that you need to know about. You need to hear about how this happened. She wanted money. She called Xavier. Okay, now let's think about this for a second. Xavier at this time is not long out of prison, as they say. You'll hear evidence of that. He's gone to live with his mother. He has no driver's license. He has no car. He had a job for a little while. He has no skills. He has nothing. What he has is his upbringing and some things that happened to him in his life. Mr. Murphy is going to talk to you about that. I'm bringing you to the point of the offense, okay? Lives with his mother for a while where he sleeps on the couch, tries to get a job, gets a job at Minute Maid Park, is there for a while. There are people surrounding him saying, give me money, give me money. His mother and Vertasia Jackson. Eventually, in a month or two, he moves out, lives with Vertasia Jackson, who is a hideous human being. This is a person who's a drug addict, a convict, who manipulates him in the worst sort of way. Prosecutor told you you're going to hear evidence about, well, a month before this crime, he pulled a gun on her. She tried to dismiss the charges with the district attorney's office. She brought him right back into that house to live with her. She was questioned by the police, by the detectives in this case. And all she did was lie. All they had to do was do everything in the world to get the information about what happened in the case, because she was manipulating him in a terrible, terrible way. You'll hear evidence of this. To make him not guilty? No. It's not why it's being offered to you, to understand it, to understand who are the characters around him. The day before this happens, it's been minimized to you already. But Mr. Davis tried to commit suicide. He took, as she said, the prosecutor, Ms. Harvey, a handful of pills. And Vertasia Jackson, in all the glory of who she is, she knows a robbery is going to take place to get money. She's behind on her rent. She's behind on her car. She needs money constantly. And she's got a guy that'll do it for her. The guy that she's accused of pulling a gun on her. She knows the kind of control that can give a person when you do that, because she did it to her mother and her mother did it to her, and the charges ended up getting dismissed. So she has that in her brain.
Object. I don't think there's any way that counsel can make this admissible.
I'll ask her when she testifies, Judge. So this is the kind of person that's doing this, okay? She says, uh-oh, here's my boy that's going to do this robbery with Alexis Williams. She knows about it. She puts her finger down his throat, calls the ambulance, calls the police come, there's body cameras of him standing outside an AutoZone store. And he goes there, he can't use his own name because she has got this warrant on him. He tried to commit suicide. There's a lot of evidence that you'll hear about why, what mental state that he was in, what mental illnesses that he had.
So we're still in opening statements. So a few of you guys were asking, like, what's this trial about? Can you give me a recap? All of that. So I figured it was a good idea to go ahead and run the opening statements. So if you scroll back about an hour, you can get a good idea of what's going on with the case, more detail, and what's going on with the defendant. We're going to let this run. Possibly by the end of this, they'll be coming back from lunch and we can get into today. If not, I'll get some information and recap you on what's been going on since from day 1 to now day 4. And we'll just keep going. Okay. So yes, we are live. Number 1, we're live. Number 2, we are in opening statements. And we're just going to take it from there. Okay.
Had all the things that he experiences a lifetime to live up to there. He's got no car, no driver's license, no place to stay, nobody that really cares or loves him in any real way. And then the last thing he's got to do for these people is to go in and commit this robbery. You're going to be asked to to look at the facts and circumstances of what happened and who benefited in this case, who wanted this to happen. You'll find out that Xavier Davis did not know these people, did not know where they lived, did not know that he was a drug dealer, did not know that there would be children there, did not know any of those things. He didn't have a car. Vertasia had to take him over to Alexis's house. Alexis or her sister would have to take him to get the car that he used to go in there. When he went in there, you'll hear from the phone conversations that the entire time they're there, he's talking to Alexis. Where do I go? What do I do? He's talking to Vertasia. Where do I go? What do I do? Vertasia's not in jail. Alexis is in jail. Vertasia's a subpoenaed witness in this case. And if they don't call her, I will. So you can hear and so you can know all of the facts of this case, all of what happened. When the evidence that you're going to hear is going to come from witnesses. Now, I want to tell you something. They're not state's witnesses. They're just witnesses. And I don't have the opportunity to call them first. The state decides who they want to call. If they want to call Vertasia, they can. They can't call Alexis Williams because she's in jail, charged with this crime as a co-defendant, as a lawyer, but not going to testify. They could call Vertasia if they want to. They could call a number of people that appeared on that scene who had all kinds of things that they saw and things that would happen. They could call the brother of Gregory Carhill, who showed up on the scene and actually did take her or get her to the hospital, but took his phone and did things to hide the facts of what were really going on there with the drugs and the other things that are in that apartment, to clean all that stuff up. A lot of things happened over there in that apartment afterwards. Does it make him not guilty? No. Do I tell you this, that somehow this is going to make you find him not guilty? No, the judge is going to tell you to go find him guilty, and the reason is because he told you that he is. That's that. What we're doing here is something completely different. Now, that is part of it. We intend to ask these witnesses questions on cross-examination, as if there are witnesses, to bring the evidence to you that we think you need to hear. So I want you to look at it that way when you hear it. We think the state's leaving something out. We think they're not giving you the full picture. They're not telling you the how and why and the motives and all that. The motive was for money. There wasn't a plan to kill anybody, though it did happen. And you're responsible for it, Ms. Davis, which he accepts. Now, I'm going to frame to you right now a question that needs to be answered for you. And that question is this. And it's how we're going to present the evidence that Mr. Murphy is going to talk to you about in just a few minutes. The question is this, and think about this. How does it come to be that one of the most innocent things in the universe, which is a baby, could be born with all that God gives him in his image and likeness, and it's all of its purity, is handed over to two parents with the proviso that you take care of this child, that you clothe this child, that you feed this child, that you shelter this child, that you educate this child, that you protect this child, that you comfort this child, that you do all the things that God is asking you to do when he gives you the most precious gift that he can give you as a child. That's what this case is about. It's no longer about whether he's guilty or not. They're going to ask you to kill him by your verdict. So you need to know everything about him and his family. Ms. Murphy's going to talk about that in just a second, because that's what they're asking. That's how we're framing this question. That's how the prosecutors have framed this question as the evidence come in, and you should be thinking about it as we ask these questions. Was everything that happened to Mr. Davis his sole choice, and he's solely responsible for it? That we take that baby at his age now and give him back to God. Didn't work out for him. Or are you going to see something in this trial? Are you going to hear some evidence about his background that you've all sworn you'll take a look at in answering that question? His background, not just things you say he did in prison or spitting on somebody or something like that. You'll take a close look at this case and determine, is there something that lessens his moral culpability? Not his legal culpability. He's giving it to you. He's handing it over to you. And his lawyers are going to show you his life. And they're going to let you go in your heart and soul, find that moral reason. Answer this question. Is there something that's sufficient that will warrant spending the rest of his life in prison, rather than handing him back to God? Poison in him early. Sorry, this didn't work out quite that way. Not blaming our defense in this case. It's not blaming someone else. It's just the way it happened for him. You know, the arguments will be later on when we argue this case. As Ms. Harvey said, well, he makes his own choices. There are forces that can affect a human being that make you do things that other people wouldn't do. And you're about to learn that. That's how we are framing this question. That's what we're asking you to look at as you hear the evidence that's coming your way. It's important to know the facts of the case. It's important to expect the state of Texas, if they're going to kill somebody, to bring you the whole story. Bring it all out there as bad as it is. It's bad. We know it. We all have children and grandchildren. We all know what you feel already. But let's do, as this trial progresses, what the law requires us to do. Because in the end, it's an individual decision that you will make. This time I'm going to ask Mr. Murphy to come up and talk to you a little bit about how you can, what you're going to hear, and how you can answer that question. Thank you, Your Honor.
Does anyone quiet down on the record? So, would you mind getting the TV on with Mr. Murphy, please?
I got it.
Oh, there you go. Mr. Murphy, whenever you're ready.
Mr. Davis is guilty, but he hasn't always been guilty. He's guilty now, but he hasn't always been guilty. There was a time when he was as innocent as any of us. He was as innocent as God made him, as God intended him to be. The story that I'm about to tell you and the evidence that I think we're going to show you over the next several weeks is going to help you answer a question that I'm sure you have and that Mr. Kiernan just touched on. And that is, how does a person lose their innocence? How did Xavier Davis go from that day to this day? How did he become guilty? It would be natural for us all to think, well, the story must begin on his birthday. It must begin when he began. But it doesn't. Sadly, his story begins several generations before him. And this is all going to be part of what you hear. So I want to show you briefly a bit of his family tree. The story really begins with his great grandparents, Raymond and Ruby Polk. They become Raymond particularly becomes very important in Xavier's life later as Xavier is getting older. But Raymond and Ruby are, by all accounts, great people. Raymond was a Navy veteran, a hard worker. Ruby was a loving mother and grandmother, and she ultimately had rheumatoid arthritis and dealt with health issues. Raymond was such a great guy and a wonderful guy, and ended up having all of these people in his house. And he did for them before he did for himself. You'll hear a story that when there was no food in the house and there was not enough to eat, Raymond would give his food to the kids before he ate. So Raymond and Ruby were, by all accounts, wonderful folks. And they lived at 5017 Airline Drive, and we're going to talk more about that. But in that house, they brought home their children. One of them was named Rosalind. Rosalind is Xavier's grandmother. Rosalind is still alive today. The sad story of Rosalind is that she was hopelessly addicted to crack cocaine. Her whole life, she did crack cocaine. Everybody knew she did crack cocaine. She did it in front of people. She, in order to get, and it feels awkward and odd saying this. I'm taking a quick aside. It feels awkward and odd saying this and being what may sound to you as critical of her and others. It's particularly difficult knowing that Xavier is right over my shoulder and the depth of the pain this must cause him. But it is what it is. It's the truth. And Rosalind had to go out and prostitute herself, and that was widely known. She was in the streets in order to get the cocaine that she wanted or needed. Rosalind gave birth to several children, and the fathers of these children are unknown. But the three names that I want to key in on are Tawanika, Laquilla, and Kenyatta. You're going to hear from Laquilla and Kenyatta, who are the aunt and uncle of Xavier. Tawanika is the key figure. She's the critical character in this story because Tawanika is Xavier's mom. Now, Laquilla and Kenyatta and all these other people who were living in this house, they were able to get out. Laquilla and Kenyatta left. But Tawanika never did. And, you know, that's how it turned out for her. Tawanika had stayed there. She saw her mother doing cocaine. She saw her mother prostituting herself. And at 15 years old, Tawanika becomes an even greater victim. Tawanika gets raped and pregnant when she's 15. And she gives birth to Travion, now Travion Davis. Travion is Xavier's older brother, 2 years older. Tawanika can't handle it. She's 15, she's a child herself. She gives Travion away, which is repeating the conduct that her own mother did when her own mother, Rosalind, had children and gave them away, literally gave them away. Laquilla will testify about that. And as she'll say, thankfully gave me away. I didn't have to grow up in that atmosphere, 5017 airline, but Tawanika gives Travion away. 2 years later, Tawanika meets and has a baby, she's 17 now, with a guy named Joe Davis. Joe Davis is Xavier's dad, and Joe Davis will be also part of this trial. They have another baby named Keith. So the three boys are Travion, Xavier, and Keith. Tawanika, after she has Xavier, brings Travion back to the house. So all three together. Now, Joe Davis, the father, who is he and what's he about? Well, it won't surprise you that his background is very similar. His mother died when he was 7. He had 7 siblings. He moved around from place to place, just like you will see Xavier did. He never graduated from high school. And as Travion says, he says that Joe was angry and mad at the world when he was sober, but he was a drunk, and when he was drunk, he was nicer. The testimony will show Joe to be a big drinker and a big pot smoker. And the implication of all that is, of course, that he was just medicating himself. But apparently when he was drunk and high, he was a calmer guy and a calmer influence, but he never stood up to Tawanika, and that becomes important. So they lived at 5017 Airport, and I want to describe for you what it was like in this place. And the best way to do that is to tell you what Laquilla is going to say. And I'll read it with you. The whole house was always confrontation around there. My brother, Kenyatta, and Rosalind got into it a lot. She would curse the kids out. There's a whole lot of people there. Rosalind was always in the street. It was filthy and nasty. I didn't eat anything when I was there. I didn't even want to go to the bathroom. Xavier grew up in that house. He slept in the front room with his grandpa. The rest of them slept on the floor. And then Papa, who was the great-grandfather, Raymond, he would make grits and toast, but there was really no home-cooked meals. And they really didn't take care of the kids like they should. Xavier, from birth to roughly, well, he was 10 or 11 years old, he moved in and out of this atmosphere. And Laquilla says, I hated even going over there after Ruby died. Ruby was the great-grandmother. I was in elementary school, and I wasn't comfortable with it. It looked like a house you didn't want to be in. And that's where Xavier and his brothers grew up. I was seeing them on the weekends, and I was happy I wasn't raised with them. Every day, I thank God I wasn't raised with them. That's what life was like. Kenyatta Pope, who Laquilla's brother, Rosalind's son, Xavier's uncle, put it very succinctly. I knew what was going to happen if they kept living in that neighborhood. Kenyatta is a very strong personality. He is going to fill up this whole courtroom with his anger at his sister, Tamanika, with his anger, with the circumstances that were beyond many of their control. And he is going to describe what it was like living there, how they went without food, how, as I told you before, his grandfather, Raymond, would give them food, and he wouldn't have any. And Kenyatta, would leave a little extra money at the house because he knew that he would leave without telling his papa, because he knew that his papa wouldn't take it. So, I'm sorry. Oh, go backwards here. So there we are, 5017 Airport. I want to describe for you what the neighborhood was like. Just a little, it's called a Sunnyside, and it's just a little south of the South Loop. And what we've done is we've asked somebody who does this for a living to come in and give us some statistics about that neighborhood that shows what the neighbors were like, what the schools were like, what the income of the people was like, just so you get a sense of this, not just that one house there, but the whole neighborhood. And I'm going to show you some slides that are going to be difficult for you to see. But I'm going to do the best I can here. You see all of these maroon dots? See the maroon dots? Those are houses that we can establish that Xavier lived in from between 2000 and 1996. 1996 when he went off to the Texas youth prison. And if we count them up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different places. That is a minimum of the number of places that he lived in, his parents moving him around. He spent most of his time in the 5017 place. Why is he moving so much? You know, that's not a healthy thing. He's moving so much because his parents don't have any money. They're not able to support themselves, much less a family with 3 kids. So they get an apartment, they get evicted. Then they get an apartment, and then they get evicted and have to continue to move. We'll talk in a minute about the little yellow boxes, which are schools that he attended. But I want to stick on this to show you this neighborhood a little bit. This slide right here is showing let me step back. It says 14.33%. What that means is this. It's tracking a small sector of this map, this little sector right here. And what the and this is data from the United States Census. What the census does is they break it down to smaller bits. And roughly between 2,000 and 8,000 people per census tract. So this one's showing 14.33% means that house, the one on airport, if you look at the top, in that little census tract, 14.33% of people were adults aged 25 and over with less than a 9th grade education. Say that again, 14.33% of the people who lived in that little section were 25 and over and didn't have a 9th grade education. If you compare that number to all of Harris County, it is 88% higher than the rest of Harris County. The next slide shows you adults age 25 no high school diploma. In his airport house, 29.05% of the people were over 25 and didn't have a high school diploma. That is 231% more than the Harris County average. There are going to be many, many, many slides you'll see from a really dynamic person named Amy Wynn, who does all this statistical analysis. She's dynamite. But I'm going to show you one more. The population living at or below the poverty level in his census tract, 35.23% of the people in that census tract live below the poverty level. That is 135% more than the Harris County average. Now, it doesn't take an expert, of course, for you to know that these statistics that I've showed you, population with no education or very little education, population with less money and living below the poverty level, those are all factors that impact a child and impact the manner in which they act later in their life. These are very significant risk factors. So that's the neighborhood. What's the house like? What's going on in that house? What was going on in that house and the other places that Xavier lived with his mother was very severe physical abuse. You're going to feel it, you're going to hear it, and in your mind's eye, you're going to see it, because the people who suffered from it, Travion, Keith, are going to describe it for you. They're going to take you right where this was happening. And this is how Xavier grew up. This is from Travion. Mama was mentally and physically abusive. She was angry at the world. Instead of her getting help because of her anger, she would take it out on me. Travion, it seems, got the worst of it. And the conjecture is that he got the worst of it because he was a child of rape. I remember getting a whooping and slapped in the face at 3 or 2 years old. That was her anger outlet. We were her punching bags. She abused us the whole time we were growing up. Mom would say, drop him, and you get beat like a slave. It got out of hand. She used extension cords, switches, and belts. She'd hit you in the back of your legs and thighs and leave welts and bruises and permanent scars. Xavier used to run. It wasn't just like 2 minutes. He used to run and hide under the table and under the bed, screaming and hollering. After a while, his whooping got long and drawn out, and they went on for a while, like 15, 20, 30 minutes. And Joe, the dad, never stopped it. He whooped Xavier too when Xavier did stuff, but he only used the belt. Sometimes I felt bad for Xavier, but I was like, what can I do? If you go over and knock on the door, you'll get whipped too. You can hear it from the bedroom. When you've been through it, you know what's going on in there. I saw deep scars on Xavier and his thighs. And I still have scars to this day. She was, by all accounts, beat up her children. There are CPS events later, which I'll get to. But let me give you fast forward a little bit. Don't expect Tom and Nika to come in here, Mrs. Pope, to come in here and say, yes, I'm at fault. Yes, I was the one. Yes, I am the reason. Yes, I'm the reason 3 of my children ended up at TYC, to Texas Youth Prison. I'm the reason 2 of my children are ended up in TDC. I'm the reason my children have severe mental health problems. Ain't gonna happen. I don't suspect that's gonna happen. Mrs. Pope has created an alternate reality. And it's because probably it's what she has to do to
Your Honor, I object. This is argument.
I believe the evidence is going to be this, that she created an alternate reality so
Your
that
Honor,
she.
I object. That's
what I think the evidence is going to show you.
This is more of a summation here.
Well, okay, very good. I'm not going to quibble with you. You're going to get a chance to weigh her testimony, to evaluate her, and to see where she's coming from, and to try to figure out in your own mind why she's won't accept the responsibility that she's definitely earned. She was also very emotionally abusive. She would curse the children, ultimately abandoned them. I'll tell you that story. She showed no love to them and provided no stability. So let's go back to the maps. Sorry. And by no stability, I said that we've seen 9 different places in this period of time. If we count the schools, it's 14. Okay? He lived in at least 9 different places, went to at least 14 different schools. They may not all be different. He would go out of school and maybe come back to the same school he was in before, but 14 school changes. So no time for him to develop bonds with neighbors, no time for him to develop bonds with community, no time for him to develop bonds with teachers, no time for him to develop bonds with mentors or to make mentors. He was moving around all the time. Things really begin to take a turn even for the worse starting in around 2005. Xavier's 11, starting to get into adolescence. He's out of the house a lot. He's on the streets a lot. He's smoking marijuana. He's having sex. He's doing things that a child of 12 or 13 years old shouldn't be doing, including committing crimes. But there wasn't a mom at home saying, "Where are you?" There wasn't a food on the table at the end of the school day. There wasn't a teacher calling saying, "Hey," that we know of anyway, "Hey, Xavier's got these issues." That's not happening in his life. And in 2005, he's exhibiting very serious mental health issues. Ends up in a mental health hospital. That hospital is called M4HIRE Hospital. This is in 2005. He's 12 years old. He's doing drugs. He's exhibiting mental health issues. Ends up there. He spends 2 weeks in a mental health hospital as a 12-year-old. When he gets out of there, first of all, he is diagnosed as having bipolar, and he was having also some psychotic episodes. He was hearing, and this is something that also goes through some of his time at the Texas Youth Prison. He was hearing voices, and he would hear the voice mostly of his great-grandmother Ruby. And here we are for the first time on medication. They give him Depakote and they give him Zyprexa. It is very clear to the healthcare professionals that there's something wrong and he needs help. This is when he's 12. Now, 2 weeks go by and he's let out into the world, back to his mom, and it goes nowhere. And sadly, M4HIRE Hospital is out of business. They lost their certification or licensing or whatever, and we don't have any of the records from M4HIRE Hospital. Nobody does. They don't exist as far as we can tell. But that was the first time he was seen for that. So you remember what I'm saying to you, 2004, 2005, 2006, things are really getting severe for him. And CPS starts getting involved. Now, the CPS records that we've been able to get are very sparse. They either didn't do anything or they didn't take records of what they did. But they're very few. And you'll see that starting in around 2004, 2005, CPS starts to get calls. They're called to investigate whether Talonika was abusing Trevion in 2004. They called to investigate whether Talonika and Joe Davis were abusing all their children and were not properly supervising them, June of 2005. Initiated second investigation of whether Talonika and Joe were not supervising Xavier in June of 2005. And then again, they investigated whether Xavier abused was abused by his parents in September of 05. So CPS is lurking all around, but finding nothing. The term they used was undetermined, is my memory. Is undetermined. So here is this chance. Well, let's move to 2006. 2006 is the critical year. It's in a way, it's the end. It is truly the end for him, in a manner of speaking. There's before he's in prison and after he's in prison. And that occurs in the end of 2006 when he ends up in Texas youth prison. Throughout 2006, things go on a very quick and very steep decline. Tawanika throws Joe out of the house. She hooks up with another boyfriend. The new boyfriend and Xavier and the boys don't get along with him. Tawanika throws her kids out of the house. And you know where she takes them? To Joe Davis. You think, oh, hey, that's what you should do. Take them to your dad. The dad was living in a car. Takes all three kids, takes all three kids, drops them off at the car where Joe Davis was living. They're sleeping in a car. This is in the spring or summer of 2006. He can't handle it. He's got nothing. He takes them to his sister's house. He ends up, guess what? Right back at 5017. By this time, Papa, Raymond, great-granddad, in his 90s, he can't deal with it. I'm sorry, he can't handle it. And it's like being with nobody. All Travion, Xavier, Keith, they were all on the streets. They were just on their own. They ate butter, sugar, and chips. They had no food in the house. And they were out and about. And Keith is going to tell you something I think is important, and that is, he's going to say, really, Xavier admired Travion. And Travion was a mess. Travion was kind of the leader of this group. Travion had him out there doing crimes, doing stuff. And according to Keith, that was really, Travion was Xavier's idol, looked up to him. And as Keith will tell you, it was the single worst example he could have possibly chosen or had. But it would be natural to look up to your older brother. And there is a story that happens there in the middle of 2006 that exemplifies what I'm saying to you about the complete abandonment of Tawanika and her children. Xavier is out of that. He has run away. Joe calls the police. Joe was living in Pasadena, I think, at the time, or South Houston, something like that. Hey, Xavier's run away. I think he might be over at his great-grandfather's house on Airport. The Houston police go over there, open the door, and there is Xavier Davis. The police officer gets on the phone and calls Tawanika. Right, okay, call the mom. Tawanika hangs up on him. Bam, hangs up the phone. Police officer's thinking, you can't just hang up on me. No. He calls her back. And she says, She doesn't say, oh my gosh, I was been so worried about Xavier. What she says is, I'm not taking him back. Do not bring him to me. Complete end of the line abandonment of her relationship to him. So here we are. He's about to commit, at the end of 2006, Xavier's about to commit an aggravated robbery at a McDonald's. That aggravated robbery sends him off to the Texas Youth Prison. So it's good to take sort of an inventory right now. What is it? Where are we now before that happens? Keith Davis is going to sum it up for us. He says, Xavier is my favorite brother. He always looked out for me, took care of me, had my back, and made sure I was fed, even if he wasn't. Even if he couldn't make it to school, he made sure I was in school. He walked me to school. He did whatever he had to do to send me to school. He sold weed. He was working at a barbershop at a car wash. He was there for me. He bought groceries for me, gave me money for school. He made sure I had everything I needed. But according to Keith, Xavier was depressed half his life, half our childhood. Xavier was depressed. I started noticing it a few months after we got to Papa's house. When Mom started beating on us when she came by to see us or when we were hungry. Xavier would go quiet. He'd make him feel good. You couldn't make him smile. He'd just sit there in Papa's rocking chair, go out in the shed in the backyard. He'd cry. He'd talk to nobody. And he'd sit out there for hours. It wasn't long after that he committed the aggravated robbery that sent him off to the Texas Youth Prison. So what happens there? You'll hear us say the words Texas Youth Commission, Texas Juvenile Justice Department. Same thing. It's where children who had committed crimes and had been found delinquent got sentenced to go be in prison. And it's important to it's important to understand what this TYC was and what the culture there was at the time. What Xavier was walking into when he walked into the Texas Youth Commission. In the 90s, there was a real movement to be tough on crime policies, and those movements bled over even into the Texas Youth Prison. It became not a rehabilitative place, a place for treatment, but a place for punishment. And over the decades, there have been many investigations of the Texas Youth Commission by various law enforcement places for abusing children, for sexually abusing children, for other things, mistreating children. So he walks into this in the TYC, he spends 5 years there. And nearly immediately when he walks in, he's a mess. The fights start almost immediately. He gets beaten up by what appears to be a gang of guys within the first month. And he's diagnosed with bipolar, ADHD. And his 5 years there in TYC are really marked by isolation. That was a form of punishment. When you broke the rules, they put you by yourself in a cage. Many suicide attempts, lots of fighting, and lots of medicine. Over this time at TYC, these are the diagnoses that he had. Sorry. Okay. He was He was diagnosed with having ADHD, so it's something we're all familiar with. ODD, which is a behavioral condition usually diagnosed in childhood, characterized by a persistent pattern of negative, defiant, hostile behavior toward authority figures. Bipolar disorder, which is a mental health condition characterized by extreme shifts in mood, energy, activity levels, periods of intense highs and intense lows. Antisocial personality disorder, a mental health condition characterized by a persistent pattern of disregard for and violation of the rights of others. Mood disorder, a mental health condition primarily affecting a person's emotional state, characterized by extreme emotional highs and lows, such as depression or mania. Conduct disorder, impulse control disorder, psychotic disorder, major depressive affective disorder, which is characterized by persistent sadness, loss of interest, and other symptoms that affect your daily functioning. He was seen by the mental health professionals there, and that's the list, the laundry list of things that he was diagnosed with suffering from. These are the medications that we've been able to glean from all of the records that they gave him over that time. Zoloft, Concerta, Trileptal, Wellbutrin, Tegretol, Seroquel, Trazodone, Depakote, Depakane, Celexa, Prozac. So you see that. The doctors at these places were obviously very concerned about his mental health. We're going to take a very brief side trip, because what we've seen is Xavier experience certain parts of our social safety net. We have decided as a society that there should be a social safety net to catch kids, to find at-risk children before they end up poorly, to serve them, to protect them, to help them ensure that they can have a productive life. This social safety net is something we all pay for, and something we pay for through our governmental services because we've decided it's important. We have somebody who's going to come talk to you about the social safety net, its importance in our society, what it is. CPS is a part of it. Our school systems are a part of it. The juvenile justice system is a part of it. And she, Jessica Handelman, who's a board certified licensed clinical social worker and testifies all over the United States, reviews CPS records, she reviews school records, she reviews records from the TYC, and she can reach an opinion about whether that safety net worked in the case of Xavier Davis. And her opinion is going to be that it did not. So he gets 5 years in TYC in this environment. He gets out. Not long after that, he's back in TDC. He's now, which is not a surprise to anyone. He's now in grown-up prison, spends 8 years there. There are a couple of things to note that I think will be helpful for you. Which, by the way, that's our goal. Our goal is to give you information to help you answer these critical questions and make what must be, or may be, one of the most difficult decisions you'll ever make. But one of the several things in these TDC records that I'd like for you to be ready for. One is it appears that there's no gang activity. There's some question about whether Mr. Davis got into a gang when he was 11, 12, and that's when that all started. But at TDC, where it's very important for them to keep tabs on this, on the inmates, to see who's in a gang, what gang they're in, because you don't mix the Crips and the Bloods, and you don't put them in the same cell, that kind of thing. It's very important to the authorities there at the TDC who are pros. They're professionals. They have said that there was no gang affiliation. It appeared that to them, that he was not involved in a gang activity. That, I hope, is something that you'll find important. You'll also see that there were no physical assaults of guards. I know that there's been disrespectful behavior of guards that you heard from Ms. Harvey. There certainly is no excuse for it. But what you're also going to be interested to know is, what did he hurt anybody? Physically hurt anyone? Is there a guard who's going to come in here and say, he punched me in the back? The answer is no. Is there an inmate who's going to come here and say, this guy hurt me, assaulted me, jumped me? The answer is no. Doesn't think the big takeaways from those. So he gets out, as you know, out of TDC. He's only out for a few months, and then these murders happen. There are two main events that are important for you to consider that occurred during that time. One is the suicide attempt that Mr. Kiernan discussed with you. Those kinds of things can impact a person's brain. First of all, it kind of tells you where he was at the time, what his mental health was, mental status, but it also can absolutely impact the physical brain when you take these kinds of drugs. That's number one. But number two, there is a video that you will see that will be hard to watch. It's not easy to see, but it's important. And here's what it is. We're not 100% sure when it happened, but it was in the time leading up to the murders. Somebody posted this video on some social media. It is Xavier in a fist fight with another guy, unknown person. The video is a minute, maybe. And Xavier is going around this guy, and the other guy doesn't appear very scared, and there's a reason for that. He hits Xavier one time, knocks him down, gets on top of him, and then picks Xavier up and throws him to the ground so violently that Xavier is knocked out. He then stands over the knocked out Xavier Davis and hauls back and punches him as hard as he can right in the face. Xavier, you will see, is passed out. His hand is in a very odd shape, showing that the brain is really having an issue. Why do I tell you this? Because there is a doctor who is named Dr. Lou Wine. He's going to, who also testifies all over the United States. He's done special testing on Xavier's brain. Just recently. And this testing, you can actually see the damage in Xavier's brain. He, on a part of the brain that's very important to emotional regulation, to decision making, to controlling behavior. And what Dr. Lewine says is, I don't know where that brain damage came from. I don't, it could have come from the long history of just childhood abuse, that happens over, the period of Xavier's childhood. But it could have happened, also come from a brain trauma, a brain injury. And there it was, right there, shortly before the murders. May have contributed to this part of Xavier's brain, which is so severely damaged. You'll also hear, and this is, I'm going to close here. You'll also hear from a childhood development psychologist who will take you through what are called ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, ACEs. Children who experience ACEs are at a higher risk of having mental illness. ACEs like being physically abused, emotionally abused, witnessing violence, taking drugs, seeing people take drugs, losing your family, no connections in your neighborhood, those kinds of things. ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. She's going to tell you that there are 10 possible ACEs. They fall into categories, but there are 10 possible ACEs. And after reviewing all the records, after meeting with Mr. Davis, after meeting with his family, other witnesses, she will say that Xavier experienced 10 out of 10 ACEs in his life. But where is he today? Well, we'll have a doctor who will come testify about where he is today.
This lawyer is like from the Craig Lewis School of Law.
Well, let me step back just 1 second and also say that the doctor who's going to discuss ACEs with you is also going to discuss this idea of intergenerational trauma. It's an idea that's very accepted in the field of psychology. And what it means is that trauma that occurred before you were even born can impact you. And it can even find its effect from one generation to the next through gene expression. That's a possibility. Prenatal exposure, of course, if you had fetal alcohol syndrome, that kind of thing. But parental behaviors, intergenerational trauma. So he is diagnosed, well, you'll hear from another doctor who is going to tell you that after his visits with Mr. Davis, after his discussions with other witnesses, after his review of all these records, he's going to say that Xavier has many disorders now, including a type of schizophrenia, a depressive disorder, and others. And all of those disorders impact his brain functioning and his ability to think rationally and to make appropriate decisions. So, I fear I'm taking too much of your time, but I'm hopeful that this will be helpful as we go for the next few weeks for you to put into place, into perspective, the evidence that you're going to hear. Also knowing that all of this, as Mr. Kiernan told you, is not intended at all to be an excuse for what happened or to make him not guilty in any way. And ultimately, it's our hope that this story of Xavier Davis and everything he went through will help you. It will just help you make a decision about these very, very important special issues that we all discussed in jury selection. We discussed there's the guilt part, got that, and now what do we do? And now you're in the what do we do part, and it's our hope that we're able to help you make that decision. Thank you. Thank you, Judge.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm bringing out for a brief moment. All rise to the jury.
They're gonna break for lunch. Baby, when he said over the next few weeks, oh my God. These dogs have been having a field day in here this whole time. He is guilty. He already claimed guilty. But it makes me also question, like, if you're saying all of these things and his inability, his brain functions are limited and he's not, how did he come to make this decision? I don't know. Anyway, he says he's guilty. They've already accepted his guilty plea. They're in the penalty phase, but they have to hear all of the evidence to make sure for the jury to be able to make a decision whether he's going to get the death penalty or life in prison without parole. One way or the other, he's already guilty. Anyway, guys, I appreciate y'all. I think we're going to go ahead and take a break. I will see you guys a little bit later on this evening. I will see you guys a little bit later on. You guys comment down below. I'm gonna have to go in here and edit out the beginning, all of that silence at the beginning because we were waiting. So any of you guys who've been here for the full time, you guys are amazing. I love you guys. It was fun. You guys' comments have me in here rolling. I was trying to take things seriously because I know that this is a very serious proceeding, but y'all have me cracking up. Mm. Mm. Okay, guys, let's take a break. I'm gonna see you guys in a few hours. Okay, you guys have a wonderful afternoon. I'm so glad you guys joined me today, and I will see you guys a little bit later on. We definitely, I don't want to say too much, but I will see you guys a little bit later on. So, like I said, I appreciate you guys coming in and joining me this afternoon. Okay, I'll see you guys a little bit later. Bye, guys. Take care.